Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Paul Karolyi, and you're listening to Mayoral Madness, our effort to get to know all 17 candidates who want to be Denver's next mayor. Today, I'm speaking with State Senator Chris Hansen. Senator Hansen, welcome to the show.
Hey, Paul, thanks so much for having me.
So you've been campaigning for a while now. We're maybe a month and a half away from the election. I'm sure it's taken you all over the city. I would love to hear about a place that is new to you or a new place that you've loved recently.
Yeah, I just had a chance to visit Beacon Kempner campus over on the west side of town and to get to know some of the staff over there. It's a wonderful part of the DPS family, and have known some of the administrators there for a long time. And it was just, really wonderful to see the great work they're doing. And that was a very new place for me to go and visit that school. So that one really sticks out over the last couple of weeks.
Interesting. I'm not familiar. That sounds like an interesting place. But let's get right into it. I want to start with one of the big questions. Why do you want to be mayor?
Well, as I said in my opening statement last night on the Channel 9 debate, I am running for mayor because I want to build a city that works. And right now, I don't feel like Denver is working very well. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm seeing and hearing from lots of folks in town that they're feeling frustrated. The city just isn't functioning and at its full potential. And I feel like this is a moment for Denver to create a new direction. And as the next mayor, I want to build a great team to tackle the toughest problems that we're up against. And I've been really trying to stress the themes of how do we build a safer, more affordable, and greener Denver. And that's really where I want to put my focus as the next mayor.
So the flip side of that question is, why are you the right person for the job?
Well, I've been really trying to share, who I am with the Denver voters and, my background and the skills that I think I can bring to this office. I think first and foremost, I'm an engineer by background. I, have had a long private sector career and leadership in the private sector, leading large business units and multi-billion-dollar projects. I've then left my job and ran for state legislature, where I've served on joint budget committee and helped lead, the $40 billion state budget and managed giant pieces of legislation in the legislature. So I think I bring a very unique kind of public and private sector background and set of skills. But most importantly, a mayor is not an island. A mayor is only as good as the team he or she can build. And I feel really confident, with my background, that I can bring in a great cabinet and a great set of managers to really help the city run and to help Denver work again and tackle the tough issues that we're up against.
Hit me with a couple of names. Who are some people that are at the top of your list? Like, I would really love to hire them.
Well, yeah, one of the folks who I've known for a long time who is at the city now is the city attorney, Carrie Tipper. And I was very fortunate to be with her in the state house and in the state legislature. And I think she is someone who brings a really wonderful perspective to that job. So that would be somebody I would love to see if I can convince to stay a part of my administration. So I think that's a good example. But the other spots, the other important cabinet officials, I've always, I guess, was really thinking back to some of the previous mayoral transitions. And I think what always worked best in those situations is where you went in with a really open mind and left yourself open to lots of possibilities that might not seem apparent in the heat of a campaign. And so, I've talked to a lot of wonderful people in this campaign. I have no doubt we'll have some amazing folks who will be able to step forward. But I'm not sort of campaigning on, hey, support me and I'll make you such and such at the city. That is definitely not what I'm doing. I really feel like the city can thrive if we've got a great mix of public and private sector talent that can come and really shepherd our departments and lead our departments. So that's really what I want to do.
You mentioned your engineering background. When I learned that, I knew I wanted to ask you a question about technology. And earlier this month, the city of Denver banned TikTok from government-owned devices. Colorado Senior Senator Michael Bennet has also called on the app stores to remove TikTok. But at the same time, many other elected officials, including our governor, Jared Polis, are using it to communicate with their followers. I'm curious, as mayor, which of the following three options are you most likely to do?
Oh, yeah, Paul, that's a great question. There are real concerns about data privacy and, especially with the relationship of TikTok to the Chinese government. I think having, a ban on TikTok on public devices, I think, is appropriate. And I think that is something I would want to continue, for city-owned devices. I think that makes sense because we just don't have a good idea of kind of the data management side of that app, given the tight relationship with the Chinese government. For personal use and communicating to constituents and, the kind of the suite of social media options, I think it's useful. It's something we're using in our own outreach on the campaign. But I think it makes sense to keep it off the, public sector devices.
So you are using it, but you do support the ban for cybersecurity reasons.
Yeah, I think, for possible data leaks and data issues, it makes sense to not have it available on the city-owned devices.
You mentioned the 9 News debate last night, at which your television ad was a hot topic. You got some blowback. I want to ask you about the ad. It focused on homelessness and public safety. It shows some footage of tents on a sidewalk and some people doing violence. And you posed this question: how did it come to this? I found that a little vague. I'm not really sure what you're saying the problem is when you say this. What do you see as the problem in Denver when it comes to homelessness and public safety?
Yeah, we had used some images to really try to lift up what I see as the top 2 issues in this campaign, which is the homelessness crisis in Denver and the public safety issues. And one of those clips was from Channel 9 News, and we had some other clips that were actually from recordings at somebody's house. But that was really what we were trying to do is really focus in on the top 2 issues and highlight the urgent need to address the homelessness crisis and public safety. But, I got attacked for that last night. This is what happens when you challenge the status quo. You often get attacked. That's politics. Like, I get it. I can handle those attacks. But it's really clear as we talk to voters all over across the city that they want real solutions on the homelessness crisis and prioritizing public safety for every single community around Denver. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue to focus on those issues. I've put out detailed plans to address the homelessness crisis. And, I got attacked by a candidate who has no plan out to address the homelessness crisis. So I think that's really what I took away from that exchange last night.
We'll talk about your plan in a second, but I want to give you a chance to respond to their main criticism in a little bit more detail. So this was Ian Thomas Tafoya and then Leslie Herod in particular, who called you out for basically demonizing people of color by using the footage that you chose to use. How do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, Paul, I mean, look, it simply, is, I think, a distraction. It was a planned attack to try to do that. And that's fine. You get attacked in politics. I think the Denver voters really care deeply about the homelessness crisis. They care deeply about the situation with public safety right now. And that's what we tried to focus on in the ad and highlight, that we've got clear plans to address that. So, look, opponents are going to attack me through this race. Again, that's part of politics. I've been an elected official for now going on 7 years. This is part of politics in Denver. But what I am very sure of is that folks really want to hear candidates' solutions to how are they going to address homelessness? How are they going to rebuild public safety department in Denver? How are they going to address, what unfortunately are some rising crime statistics? And that's what we were trying to highlight, with the advertisement that we put out, and to really respond to, what we're hearing over and over again are the top issues for Denver voters.
So I want to ask you about one aspect, one of your proposals on this issue, and it gets to this bigger question about public safety, especially for people of color in this city. And I think this is what they were trying to get at last night. And I'm eager to hear your thoughts on this, because you've said that on this topic that we need to hire more police officers, even more than the deficit the force already has. I spoke a few days ago with the president of the Rocky Mountain NAACP, Portia Prescott, and she said the only safety for Black people in America comes when there is no contact with law enforcement. So I would love to hear what you would tell Portia and other voters of color in Denver about how your plan will keep them safe.
Yeah, and to clarify, last night there was one of the questions that came up. Do you feel like we need to go above and beyond the current number of authorized officers? And my plan is to get us back up to full strength. So I want to clarify that.
So you don't want to go above the current force.
That's right. I mean, I think the authorized force we have right now is at a good level. What I would say is that it's not just about police officers. I mean, it's also about so that number, 1,600, I think is a good number for Denver right now. But we also need to make sure that we have co-responders and try to really max out the effectiveness of the STAR program, for example, or have mental health professionals who are able to be the first contact, not police. And that's better for the police, and it's better for someone who's experiencing a mental health crisis, right? You would get the right person for the right response. And so it's not just sworn officers. So I want to be really clear about that. I mean, this is a deeply human, set of crises we're up against here, where it's folks that have a mental health issue or an addiction issue. And, that's a part of the complex set of factors that we have to deal with. It's in many cases, it's not the appropriate thing to send a police officer. It's really about having the right response. And it's one of the things I'm excited about, to expand the STAR program so that that's available, all over the city. And I think there's a lot of support to do that. But, I think rebuilding the public safety department right now, I think we have to face up to the significant shortage we have in the sheriff's office and in the police department. The sheriff's office in particular is 40% right now down on frontline officers in the jail. That is leading to huge amounts of forced overtime, which is leading to more people leaving the department, which then, of course, leads to more forced overtime. So we're in this really downward kind of spiral from a human resource standpoint. And it's one of the reasons I'm so proud to have earned the support of the frontline sheriff's officers through their union, which is the Teamsters. And that I'm really proud of that endorsement, because what I communicated to them was, as the next mayor, I am going to prioritize the recruitment and training and retention of great public safety departments. And at the top of that list, of course, is making sure that our jails are properly staffed. And, the crisis right now, and I think it's a fair word, in the sheriff's department really highlights that. I mean, you just cannot operate on a sustained basis with this kind of shortage. We've got to recruit and retain. And I don't think our city works unless we have great public safety department.
Let's get back to homelessness. You've said you would enforce Mayor Hancock's camping ban. You've said you'd audit our support services. I'd love to hear more about your plan and why you think yours is the right approach.
Yeah, let's I think start with that word audit. I mean, one of the things that I really tried to spearhead and work very hard on in my time at the Joint Budget Committee was to bring an evidence-based budgeting approach to major spending decisions at the state level. And that's exactly what I'd like to do in this category. Denver is going to spend about $250 million this year on various ways of providing services, short and long-term services for folks who are unhoused. And, a lot of those programs are not showing good results. Some are. Some of those pieces are doing very well. In fact, in last year's budget that I helped lead, we put aside more than $100 million to create additional treatment capacity at the Ridgeview facility, for example, which is based on a model that has shown tremendous results at the Fort Lyon facility in the southeast part of the state. And so, that is what I think we need to do first and foremost. Let's take a hard look at where we're spending now, audit the programs, the places that are showing long-term results. Let's put more money in. The places that are not, we've got to pull back. And I think another great example that I've shared and had a chance a little bit last night to do it was what the Salvation Army is doing. They've really focused in on providing services to families experiencing homelessness. They've had a 90% placement rate in permanent housing through their programming, and bringing in wraparound services and getting kids back into school and really stabilizing those families' lives, so they've got a path back to something that's normal and that can get stable long term. That's an amazing success rate. I mean, that's another place where we've got some new state investment coming based on a bill that I helped draft and lead and get to the governor's desk. So that's the approach, right? Take a hard look. Where are we spending now? What's working? What's not? And just housing by itself is not going to produce much in the way of long-term results. And, that's I guess another piece is I've looked at cities across the country, like San Antonio, for example, who have had drastic reductions in their homeless population. It's down by almost 50% in San Antonio in the last 2 years. And what they did, I think, very effectively was enforce a citywide camping prohibition and have a one-stop shop for people to get services and quickly try to get people into stable housing with wraparound care and wraparound treatment. And that was the formula for success. And it's really the direction I'd like to take Denver. And I think the first step is that audit. And, I don't think we're going to make progress if we don't end open camping in the city. And so that's an important piece of the overall program.
I have to be honest, it sounds a lot like what Mayor Hancock says when he talks about this issue, but we haven't seen a lot of change in his time in office. Is there anything specific that he's done that you wouldn't do or that you would stop doing?
I think, we still have a huge amount of open camping in the city. I think Mayor Hancock, and his team have done some great things in their time in office, but right now the status quo is not, delivering a great result. And so I think having very, very consistent and very clear enforcement, not allowing open camping in the city is got to be a part of our approach. And, every day when I drive into the Capitol, I am seeing, homeless encampments that have been there in some cases for weeks and months. It is inhumane for those people living on the street. It is making life very hard for everyone in the city. And so I guess that's why, I feel like that is a departure from the status quo, and something that I want to communicate very clearly, to all the voters, and what I was trying to be clear about in my television advertisement.
So the other side of the homelessness issue is the housing issue. Rents are going up. Housing is unattainable for a lot of people. Some people say that the number one cause of homelessness is rising rents. And there's a bill going through, I think, the other side of the legislature that might come to you at some point that would lift the state ban on rent control. If that bill gets over to the state Senate and maybe you're elected mayor, would you implement rent control if you have the chance?
Well, I was very clear last night on the stage that I think rent control is not an effective policy. I won't be supporting it in the state legislature, and I don't think it is a good fit for our challenges in Denver. If you look at the cities that have had rent control in different various forms over the years, one of the common themes that you see is that rent control very quickly, almost immediately, dries up investment in new housing. And then that in turn creates a supply shortage, which we already have in Denver. I mean, we're at least 50,000 units short in the city right now. And if we had rent control, that shortage would only get worse because you just see a huge, massive reduction in private investment once a rent control policy comes into effect. I think what has worked way better, and what I supported through the state budget last year, is to expand things like tax credits for housing that has income qualification. So your listeners probably know about 30% AMI or 80% AMI, which is area median income. And those approaches, I think, have been way more effective than going down the route of rent control. And we've got tax incentives from both federal and state support that can really supercharge the building of new units that are going to be income qualified. And that, I think, is going to have a way better long-term outcome than if we go down the route of doing rent control. So again, I've been very clear. I wasn't being wishy-washy in any way last night. I said very straight to camera, rent control has no history of working. And I don't think it would be effective for Denver, and I don't support it.
A firm no on rent control.
That's right.
I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to a listener question. This is a question from Nate Marie and their 3-month-old Theo. They write, as we all recognize, cost of living has risen exponentially in Denver in the last 10 years. This has most dramatically affected people with the lowest incomes, but it's also been hard on the middle class. My family's income is starting to increase, which is great, but it puts us in between receiving services and having enough income to live in Denver. What specific policies could you implement while mayor to help the middle class with the cost of living?
Yeah, I feel like I've had a long history of doing this at the state level, especially on tax policy, really trying to get dedicated tax decreases for working families. The expansion of the earned income tax credit. I led that fight at the state capitol. The expansion of the child tax credit. Again, another bill that I helped sponsor. And in fact, I've got a further expansion of both of those in the legislative process right now that I'm sponsoring and leading on. And so, I think that is one of the places that often gets overlooked is the tax code. How are we supporting working families so they can keep more of their hard-earned income? And the EITC and the CTC, as they're known, are the most effective way to do that. And that's what I've really tried to focus on at the state level. And something, that as I think about running for mayor, we'll continue to advocate for those because they have such a massive help for our working families. The other thing that I'm aware of is that Denver right now, there's rapid appreciation in our property values. It's going to come down a little bit this year, thank goodness, after several years of double-digit rises. But I also led the effort of the state government to get property tax relief, particularly for multifamily and for folks who are in multifamily units, because the increases were causing some big changes in the property tax level. So I put in place $1.1 billion in property tax cuts. And so I want to highlight those because those have a huge impact on family budgets, right? That's hundreds of dollars a month in total savings for these families. And that can be, the difference between having a food budget that makes it to the next paycheck or not. And so I think those are really important pieces of my record and ways that we can really support working families in Denver. Paul, the other thing I would add is, as mayor, this will continue to be a big priority for me. And it's one of the reasons I feel so urgent about addressing the housing supply issue. And back to our discussion on rent control, because I think that would take us in the opposite direction. And so, that's what I want to really look at is catching up on that supply side, because it brings down prices for everybody if we don't have a housing shortage. I'd love to, if you'd like, describe how to do that.
So are there policies you'd change as mayor when it comes to the supply or the tax code?
No, perfect follow-up. And I was hoping to continue this discussion with you because, I see a massive opportunity for multifamily units on our high density corridors. And what do I mean by that? I mean, think in your mind's eye of East Colfax right now. It's the place where we're going to start the work on the bus rapid transit or BRT. I'm sure you probably looked at that in previous shows.
Definitely.
And, the BRT is this great, I think, opportunity to marry higher density housing with great transit and still have the ability to not have density where perhaps it doesn't fit as well. And so I really see that as a super important project for the next mayor. We've got to implement that with high fidelity, do it in a way that meets the urgency of this moment. I mean, there is the opportunity to put tens of thousands of new units up and down Colfax and up and down Federal in particular. Two corridors that are highly traveled, that if we can improve the transit and marry that up with, 4 and 5 story buildings, for instance, there's some already great examples on Colfax. There's Phoenix on the Fax, which is not far from my home in East Denver at Pontiac and Colfax. I mean, a really amazing project, 100 units, they're income qualified. There's first floor retail. It's where the Fiction Beer Company is. Great spot. Highly recommend it. You really get a great dividend with transit, with the environmental impact, with more safety because you've got, the street activated by the retail. So there's so many great compounding effects if we can get that BRT project implemented in a great way on Colfax and then take it to other parts of the city.
Well, we're already talking about transportation. That's my next question. This is one from the batch of questions that we're picking a few out for each candidate, but we're asking everybody. Denver was built for the car. Many experts say that we're going to have to change that if we want fewer traffic deaths and to lower our impact on the climate. What would you do as mayor to improve our transportation system?
Yeah, I guess really two main themes there to pick up on our BRT discussion, which is to work closely with RTD to make sure that is delivered at the quality and the frequency that we're going to need for that to be successful. I mean, you need 5 and 6 minute, peak time bus service. That is not the 15 right now. I mean, the 15 is tough to use. In fact, a few weeks ago, or I guess 2 months ago, I took my kids downtown and we decided to take the 15. And and see, what that was like to just do a Saturday afternoon in downtown Denver by taking the bus. And it was rough. We saw my youngest son was like, "Dad, was that a drug deal that I just saw go down at the bus stop?" And then my older son, said, "Dad, I didn't realize, there were just so many encampments as we got closer and closer to downtown." And for a dad, as a father, that's a really heartbreaking discussion to have, because you obviously want, everyone wants a great city for their kids. They want to hand off a great city for their kids. And so we've got to do better on the transit side, and have to do better, of course, on how that intersects with public safety. And so I would say, the BRT is a great example. The other thing I would say is Denver is going to have to step it up and fill in the gaps. I mean, I think about, the Leetsdale to downtown kind of corridor, and as it travels through Cherry Creek, and getting people to and from, the other major hubs in the city, really tough right now, and tough for workers to get to and from Cherry Creek, or for folks to be able to, jump on a bus and get downtown from Cherry Creek. You're absolutely right with the premise of your question, is that we're a city that has a heavy dependence on cars. And as we continue to grow and mature as a city, we've got to offer, great transit options to fill in those gaps. Otherwise, it will result in traffic gridlock, because you just can't build enough lanes. I-25, for example, is maxed out. Very difficult to build, additional capacity. And even if you did, as people find out with highway construction, it often gets filled up in just a short amount of time. So that's not going to be the long-term solution. We're going to need great transit. And I hope to be a great champion for transit as the next mayor.
I got a fun one for you here. Being mayor comes with special privileges. I'm sure you could call up pretty much anyone in the city and get to know them over lunch. Which local celebrity would you most want to share a meal with?
That is a great question. That is a fun question. I mean, I've always been a big sports fan. I think I would love to meet with Nikola Jokic. I'd love to have lunch with him. So exciting to see what the Nuggets are doing this year. And I mean, I think they are primed for a championship run, and something the whole city is just going to be able to really soak in and enjoy this great Nuggets team. So that'd be somebody I would love to reach out to and have a chance to get to know and learn more about his story and what he loves about Denver. So yeah, I think that would be one that comes to mind, especially as we're getting close to playoff time.
I love that answer. I have to agree. I would love to get to know him. He's supposed to be a pretty funny guy. That's what I've heard.
I know. I've heard the same thing. Yeah, great sense of humor. So it'd be fun to grab lunch.
All right, so we're wrapping up here. I've got one last big picture question for you. The main reason we're doing this, we're trying to talk to all 17 candidates, is because we really want to hear a fresh vision for Denver's future. Like, what does the city look like in 5 years, 10 years? What's the next era of Denver? So what is your vision for Denver's future?
Yeah, Paul, that is a great question to wrap up with you with, because I mean, that is fundamentally what this election is about. It's about our future and how we're going to invest in our city to make it a wonderful place for the next generation. And, I guess, through my answers today, you can probably guess kind of the direction I really want to go here, which is to be very methodical in that investment and create great neighborhoods and great spaces and interconnected spaces for Denver. Rejuvenate downtown and make sure that folks love to come downtown, and it's a place of excitement and attraction, so that we have a feel of a vibrant city and a place where we're feeling safe wherever we go across Denver. And I think it's that interconnectedness that I really want to stress. I think if I had a theme, it's, as we talked about BRT, as we talked about, how to help downtown recover, as we think about, new projects like, National Western continuing to expand. We think about the redevelopment of places like Elitch Gardens and as the city grows and changes, we've got to make sure it's interconnected. We need a great bus to be able to get to Casa Bonita from downtown. I hear the food's going to be much better soon. So, we've got to have a really interconnected city, and that we don't end up with a bunch of islands, because that is not a city that I want to live in. And this vibrant, multicultural fabric of Denver will start to break down if we don't have that great connection. And that's the kind of city I want to build for our children.
Where can people go to learn more about you and your campaign?
Yeah, I'd love for people to check out my website. Number of of course, policy papers and deep dives for folks that want to get into policy issues, but also a lot of video content to talk about some of our big ideas in this campaign. One of the things, it's at chrisfordenvermayor.com. We've got a lot on there about how to green the city. One of the things we didn't get to today was how to a more environmentally sustainable Denver, which is an important part of my vision. And really fits, my background coming out of environmental energy work. And so folks can learn more at my website, chrisfordenvermayor.com.
Well, Chris Hansen, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, Paul, thanks. I really enjoyed our conversation.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mayoral Madness. What we hope is a 17-part interview series with all the candidates on the ballot to be Denver's next mayor. We're planning to publish these episodes each weekend leading up to Election Day on April 4th, and we'll be providing more news and analysis during the week. Subscribe to CityCast Denver and learn more about Mayoral Madness at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back soon with even more mayoral candidates who want to lead the city.